Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. This is Pamela, and you are watching Pam Entertainment TV. Listen, you know how I do sometimes? It's better for me to go live than it is for me to film. I'll do a thumbnail later, okay? Or should I have done this one? I don't know if any of my stuff is coming through my soundboard, but anyway, listen. Baby, when I tell you Diddy team be working hard, they be working hard, honey. They are on a Saturday morning filing letters and motions. And you remember, we've been covering this trial uh, pretty much for the past 5 weeks. We've really gotten 4 weeks of testimony. We're going into the fifth week of testimony and the sixth week of the complete trial. But one of the things I wanted to come up here and to talk to you all about really, really quickly is the fact that Diddy's team has filed a motion for a mistrial. Now you say, Pam, what is he doing? Why is he doing that? Listen, you remember when I told you last week that there was a witness on the stand named Brianna Balanagan, and they call her Bana. She was on the witness stand and she was testifying. She testified to the fact that of the Diddy dangling her from the balcony. She testified that Diddy dangled her from the balcony after her and Cassie and her then girlfriend were at Cassie's home after a night of fun and drugs and all kinds of things. She stated that um, somewhere in the middle of the night, Diddy banged on the door, came in. She said that she took her girlfriend and took her to the guest bathroom because she didn't want her to see any of the toxicness between Cassie and Diddy. She said that she went out onto the balcony. She said that she was in the middle of it, either she had lit it or she was in the middle of lighting a blunt. And she said Diddy came uh, behind her and picked her up and dangled her over the balcony and asked her, did she know what she did? Did she know what she did? And she said that she was dangling above the balcony and it was the 17th floor. And then he took her and he threw her into patio furniture. Now, there is an exhibit on TMZ website that shows the bruise that she said that she took. Now, the defense was asking about metadata, and the day that she took that metadata was that the day that the incident happened. And she said yes. Well, Miss Westmoreland Attorney Westmoreland for Diddy's team got up there and started really wrangling her about the dates. And then once she got her to say that uh, once Westmoreland got Bana to say that the date of the incident happened was like on the 25th or the 26th of September, and shout out to those of us that are born. I was born on the 25th of September, so this happened the day after my birthday on that particular year. She then presented evidence to show that Diddy was in New York at the Bad Boy tour and that he was registered under a pseudonym called Frank Black. Now, if you're not familiar with that pseudonym, that is the pseudonym that prosecutions have shown and have proven through different people from the different hotels that Diddy has stayed that he initially started registering as Sean Combs or Bad Boy Entertainment, and then he started registering as Frank Black, um, a couple of other names, but those are the names because it's all attached to one account. Because the payer of those account was Bad Boy Entertainments or Combs Entertainment. Okay, so now with all of that, you've got to kind of back up if you're not keeping up with the trial. So let's go over this letter. I am going to read it. We're going to read it blind, meaning that I glanced over it a little bit and didn't decide no, I'll just do that on camera and then we'll talk about it and go over it. Excuse me. And as you come in, y'all hit that like button. And if whatever platform that you're coming in, if you're on X, please hit that heart button. If you're on YouTube, hit that like button. And if you're on Twitch, send a bit. All right, let's go on to this. And also, if you would like to bless the channel, memberships are available. Also, you can bless my chat, Cash App, or send a super chat. Let's continue. Oh, I have it. Okay. So you see the letter up here. So it was filed by Shapiro, Arato, and Bach on June 7th, which is today, and it's to the judge, and it says United States versus Combs. It says the defense respectfully submits this letter in support of its renewed motion for a mistrial based on prosecutorial misconduct. When introduced When the introduction of perjured testimony results in a criminal conviction and the prosecution knew or should have known of the perjury, the conviction must be set aside if there's any reasonable likelihood that the false testimony could have affected the judgment of the jury. And then they go on to cite the different cases. Moreover, the prosecutor's knowing use of perjured testimony can violate the due process clause, even if it only undermines a witness credibility. As the Supreme Court has explained, a lie is a lie, no matter what its subject, and if it's in any way relevant to the case, the district attorney has the responsibility and the duty to correct what he knows to be false and to elicit the truth. As explained below, in this trial, the government has presented testimony that it knew or should have known was materially false related to its allegation that Mr. Combs dangled Brianna Bongalon from the balcony of Cassie Ventura's apartment in September 2016. Okay. Accordingly, to avoid an unfair conviction in this case, the court should grant a mistrial. All right. Now, I will tell you this just for some further background information, because all of this is exciting to me. Cassie had put this particular incident in her lawsuit. Now, in her lawsuit, uh, it's it was made to appear that it happened around in August. Okay. But Brianna testified that the dates that Cassie put in her lawsuit was incorrect. All right. And so this is where this September date comes from, because the metadata from when that picture that she said that she took of her leg, and it's a bad bruise with a little puncture hole in it, but the date that she said that she took that picture was supposed to have been, I think, on the 26th of September. But anyway, I just wanted to give you that background because they went back and forth about dates and stuff like that. Now, Brianna did say that she was hired in Cuda Brown most of that time, and that she didn't get sober until like 2018 ish. But she didn't mention all of this stuff. So let's go into what they're saying. The government contends the alleged balcony incident is relevant because it shows Mr. Combs' violence directed not only to Miss Ventura, but to other people around Miss Ventura. She is aware of this violence, and because of her awareness, it goes into the coercion. The incident, as alleged, is disturbing and powerful evidence, and the government has used it to depict Mr. Combs in an extremely negative light as an angry and dangerous man who terrified Miss Ventura and her friends. The prosecutors elicit evidence about this allegation from both Miss Ventura and Miss Bongalong that demonstrate demonstrably false is in key aspects. They then double down using this false testimony to obtain a ruling admitting inadmissible hearsay evidence about it as well, all to present a false narrative to the jury. The government started by eliciting testimony from Miss Ventura about the allegation that cannot be true. Miss Ventura said that she actually saw Mr. Combs holding Miss Bungalong over the balcony railings. And so they look like they brought in the transcripts. It says, I saw him bring her back over the railing of the balcony, then throw her onto the patio furniture. Yet the prosecutors knew she had not actually seen what she described because they had in their possession a text conversation demonstrating that Miss Ventura was told about the alleged incident by another unidentified person. Hey, I just found out, and they give this uh, exhibit, see GXC 361C. It says, hey, and it must be text messages, okay? Hey, I just found out some crazy SHIT. I'm finding out right now. Nonetheless, they allowed Miss Ventura to continue to insist on cross that she had witnessed this incident. See transcript 1609. Question. And you testify that you saw him throw her onto the patio furniture, right? Answer. Yep. He brought her back over the balcony and he threw her down. She persisted in this story even after she was confronted by the text messages. See TR 1071. Questioning. Transcripts 1071. Question. Isn't it true that you learned about this incident on the balcony after the fact? Answer. I saw what I saw. So I don't know. Question. Has the government, in your preparation for your testimony in this case, gone over this message with you? Answer. No, not this one. No. Thus, the government left the jury with the false impression that Miss Ventura saw Mr. Combs dangle her friend over the balcony and that this made her fearful of him, when in fact, if there was any incident, Ventura merely heard about it afterward, considerably lessening any probative value as to her state of mind. Next, the government doubled down by presenting perjured testimony from Bogolon intended to corroborate Ventura's false testimony. Bogolon claimed Combs lifted her up and held her to her feet on the balcony railing. And they're talking about the I think TR, and it says, and that this caused injuries to the back of my leg and my back and my neck pain. Bongalong was very definitive about these injuries, and particularly the bruise to her leg, which is one of the details that stuck out in her mind. So let me read this before I go on and to read this next page. It's the footnotes. I want to make sure that there's nothing going on in the footnotes. As the government also knows, uh, like other witnesses in the case, Ventura and Bongalong have been in frequent contact as key points and have had many opportunities to collaborate their stories. Because if you were listening, watching, if you've been following the trial, they kept asking the question. They asked the question of Mr. Nash, have you been in contact with Ventura? And he said yes, to congratulate her on her baby. They asked Ms. Bongalong, have you been in contact with Ms. Ventura? She said yes, to congratulate her on her baby, and we are friends. They asked a couple of more people, were they in contact with Miss Ventura? And so the defense is saying that these three or four witnesses got together and kind of corroborated or collaborated a story that they can tell. Let me finish. In fact, Bongalong admitted the two friends discussed this incident before and after Ventura filed her lawsuit. Bongalong also has an enormous financial motive to lie because she filed a $10 million lawsuit against Mr. Combs based on the same allegation and will benefit by exaggerating the scope of her injuries to obtain damages. Her account makes no sense and seems to be physically impossible. Mr. Combs is only about 6 feet tall, and even if he's bigger than her, he is not tall enough to have been able to hold a shorter adult by her armpits so high that her feet would have been on the balcony railing, as Bongolian testified. Oh, what are they trying to say? He weak? I'm just answering the question because I've known people who are 6 feet tall and can lift you over their head. So I don't know exactly if they thought that this was going to be flattering or not. It says California law required balcony railings to have a minimum height of 42 inches. Ooh, I bet you Miss West Warland wrote this. So they're basically saying that 42 inches, so that's 3 feet, 3.5 feet. So that the balcony railing has to be 3.5 feet inches tall. I mean, it's possible, but we'll continue. You know how we do. All right. Here's a second footnote. Her account makes no sense and seemed to be physically impossible. Okay, I read that whole thing. All right, so let's get to the next page. I'm sorry, y'all. So they go back through the Q&A. Question: where did you go after you left Cassie's apartment? Answer: I went to my apartment. Question: what did you do at your apartment? Answer: I was shaking a lot, and then I wanted to take a shower because I felt disgusted. And then I looked over behind my leg and I see a huge bruise. Question: we'll talk about the bruise in just a moment. Miss Bungolian, do you remember all the details of the incident of that night? Answer: no. Do the details that you've talked about stick out in your mind? Yes. Question: if any physical injuries did you have as a result of that night? Answer: I had a big bruise with like a piercing in the middle of it, and then I had back and neck pain. All right, so they got that from the transcripts. Hey, hey, hey. This is ridiculous because if they had collaborated together, they wouldn't they have had their dates together? True, true. But not either one of them was high. They just said it would be interesting when the phone call that Cassie sent, or the text messages that she sent, because I don't remember when those were. Anyway, let's continue. The government next introduced photographs of the injuries Miss Bungolian supposedly sustained at the hands of Mr. Combs, and then they include the exhibits. A photo depicting the leg injury taken in September 26, 2016 at 9:45 a.m. Ms. Bungolian testified that she took the photo of her leg around the time indicated in this exhibit. Then she said, then she, that she did so the same day as the incident and that she got that injury from being thrown into the balcony furniture. On cross, she confirmed that the balcony incident happened early in the morning and that the photo of the leg bruise was taken later that day, and that the injuries to her back and her leg happened in the same day. The government then introduced photographs of injuries supposedly sustained at the hands of Mr. Combs during the incident. The government knew, or should have known, this testimony was perjured and that Miss Bungalon could not have possibly been injured by Mr. Combs on a Los Angeles balcony in the early morning hours of September 26th or even the day before that. The government has long known that Mr. Combs was on the East Coast in late September and specifically at around the time of the alleged incident. The government knew that he had stayed at the Trump Hotel in New York between September 24th and 29th, 2016. In fact, the government had marked as GX7 Y111 the records of this hotel stay, which are now in evidence. And it has other evidence in its possession from some time showing Mr. Combs' travel schedule and proving that he was on the East Coast when it was told the jury he dangled Miss Bungolian over a balcony in front of Miss Ventura. And then they redacted these sentences. What's more, when the defense began to expose the perjury on cross-examination, the government repeatedly attempted to disrupt the cross with unfounded objections and requests for sidebars. An unfounded claim, such as that proper leading question meant defense counsel was testifying. Then, despite having elicited Ventura's false testimony about having directly witnessed the alleged incident, the government persuaded the court to admit the hearsay text with Coram describing what Ventura had found out from someone else, despite having elicited perjurious testimony from Ventura's claims that she saw the alleged conduct. All of this was highly improper and exacerbated the harm caused by suborning the perjured testimony. So they're saying that the prosecution had the information to show that Diddy was not in Los Angeles during the time frame of September 25th through the 29th, that he couldn't have been there during any of that time frame because he was on the East Coast with this Bad Boy reunion tour. They're also saying that Cassie perjured herself because she didn't see the testimony. She was only told what happened. She said that she texts KK, who is Christina Coram, to tell her what had happened, because those were the texts that the prosecution readmitted after the bombshell happened, that this woman wasn't, that this couldn't have happened because Diddy wasn't there, right? So let's continue. I don't think, yeah. Okay. It bears emphasis that the use of the perjured testimony regarding the balcony incident is just one example of prosecutorial misconduct during this trial. The defense previously moved for a mistrial based on the improper line of questioning related to the 2012 destruction of fingerprints provided by Scott Muscudi to the LAPD. As the court will recall, it wasn't Kid Cudi that said that. I thought it was the fire marshal that said that, because Kid Cudi said that he didn't know anything about like procedures or what would happen after that happened, because he said he was never contacted again in regards to this information. So they need to go back to the fire marshal. Hold on, y'all. The arson investigator. Hold on, I'm just trying to figure who that person. I'm trying to figure out what the name. So that's going to be Lance Jimenez, and he was the arson investigation for the Los Angeles County Fire Department. So it wasn't Kid Cudi who mentioned that. It wasn't Kid Cudi at all. It was this Lance Jimenez, LA Fire Department. He was the one that mentioned that there were fingerprints taken, but the fingerprint card had been destroyed by the brass or whoever. He didn't know what happened. He just knew that there were fingerprints taken, and he also knew that there was DNA, and he was told that the DNA was female, but he didn't know anything else because there was no one to match that DNA with. And there's two things that you can look at that as far as with the female DNA. You can look at it as the person who put the Molotov cocktail in the car could have been female, or whoever was drinking out of that old English 800 old English liquor bottle, who wrapped their hands around it, could have been female, because whoever did that Molotov cocktail could have gotten that old English bottle out of the trash. So, I mean, there's so many different things that you can kind of figure out, but it is something telling that the way that they had run that testimony, it did seem like the way they ran it, you could infer that they were trying to imply that Diddy was the one that made those fingerprint cards go away. However, no one said he did that. There wasn't any testimony entered into evidence that showed that Diddy had some kind of contact in these agencies or anything like that. There was no information uh, it entered into evidence at that point, or we don't even know if it's going to be anything entered later on that has that. The only place that I remember seeing something like that is was Little Rod's testimony. But we can definitely Tyrone Blackburn has had, he can't write an affidavit to save his life. He not only does he have significant amount of typos, but he tries to be so salacious that he ends up putting things in there that are not true. So you can't trust him either with half of the information now, because he's been discredited by a couple of Georgia judges, and within pretty much in this court by Miss Bungalong, because she said that he was writing stuff in there that wasn't true. But anyway, but all of that to say is in Little Rod's affidavit that he turned in, well, his lawsuit, he had mentioned that there was a pew-pewing at a studio. And he said that the people that went in was a friend of one of Sean Combs' son. That son and Diddy went into this bathroom. There was some argument. There were gunshots, and then the next thing you know, they people went into the bathroom. They saw that this young man had been shot. They ended up taking this young man and they threw him outside of the studio. And then they called the police and then told the police it was a drive-by. And the police didn't investigate, and whoever was the head of security at that time was the one that had a connection. But that information that I just mentioned was in Little Rod's lawsuit. It wasn't anything that they had introduced in court at all. The jury doesn't know anything about it, but they were saying that that was the inference that they believed that the jury put up. All right. So the defense provided previously moved for a mistrial based on the improper line of questioning related to the 2012 destruction of fingerprints provided by Scott Mescudi to the LAPD. And again, it wasn't Scott Mescudi, it wasn't Kid Cudi, it was Officer Jimenez who was doing the arson investigation in regards to the Molotov cocktail being thrown in the car. So they're going to have to update that. As the court will recall, the defense argued that the government's motive in eliciting this testimony was to create an unfounded and highly prejudicial inference that Mr. Combs somehow had corruptly arranged for the destruction of the fingerprints. The government claimed that was not the purpose of its question, and the court denied the motion and instead gave a narrow, limiting instruction. However, it became apparent shortly thereafter, during the questioning of Mia the very next day, that in fact the government's motive all along must have been to suggest that Mr. Combs had corrupt influence over the LA authorities when it tried to create the impression that he was responsible for the destruction of the fingerprints. Specifically, the government elicited testimony from Mia about two incidents in which the LAPD did not issue a ticket for speeding after she was pulled over because of the officers found out that she worked for Diddy. In one case, Mia got pulled over speeding, name dropped that her boss was Mr. Combs, and got him on the phone, after which the officer was saying, like, oh my God, Puff Daddy, I love you. Just like just went into this whole very excited conversation. And then she said, he let me go. The second times Combs was in the car. And once they saw Puff, they were like, oh, my bad, yeah, and left us alone. The prosecutor took special care to emphasize that these incidents occurred in Los Angeles. And then they have the transcripts, and it says, question, what city did these interactions with the police occur in? Answer, LA. These incidents in isolation seem like benign examples of police giving lenient treatment to popular famous people. Coupled with the sinister implications of the fingerprint destruction, however, they create a strong implication that the reason Mia, and as the government will surely agree, other alleged victims didn't go to the police was because of Mr. Combs' corrupt influence over the police and the LAPD in particular. Other words, the subsequent questioning of Mia, even if it's permissible, further corroborates that the government's real purpose in the questioning of the fire inspector, Lance Jimenez, good, they got him there. They needed to go back and fix that other paragraph. Lance Jimenez was to improperly suggest that Mr. Combs corruptly caused the destruction of the fingerprints. This constitutes another instance of prosecutorial misconduct. Accordingly, the court should grant a mistrial based on prosecutorial misconduct. And so so we got Agnafilio, Tini Garagos, Shapiro, Anna Estevallo. All of these are the ones that helped draft this letter. What do y'all think about that? That is interesting. That is interesting because let me see, let me look. So what I did is I compile a list of everybody who has testified, and I've gone over the stuff that they have testified just to jog my memory. And so she wasn't the very next witness. Deontay Nash came after Detective Jimenez from the fire department. And yeah, so yeah, she didn't directly testify right behind him, but she did testify later. And so, I mean, it was close enough. I'll give that to them. It was a close enough test for them to testify after that. But this is interesting. This is quite interesting. And like I said, uh-oh, like I said, none of that was mentioned in trial. Like I said, as far as Diddy having contacts with the police department, because I'm trying to think because it's been so many people that have testified because all of this was around Capricorn Clark's testimony. And I don't remember if they discussed with Capricorn Clark, why didn't she go to the police? And I have to look at those transcripts. So anybody that has those transcripts that are willing to share them with me, send them to pamentertainmenttv@gmail.com. I appreciate it. But what are y'all thinking? I mean, let's be clear. I think that Bungalong testimony, I really do think the bombshell about when the dates that it happened, I think that the prosecution should have narrowed down exactly what those dates was. They could have, because they could have said on or about, in the month of September, around the time or something like that. You can't pinpoint the date. And then just used all of that information to show that this was around the time that happened, because it could have happened before he went to a thing. It could have happened after. I don't know. The defense is saying that they don't believe it happened at all. They believe that it was some kind of collusive testimony uh, spun together by Cassie and Miss Bungalong. So, but I just wanted to come back because this is going to be hot and heavy on Monday. They're going to come in and they're going to be talking about this particular letter for this mistrial. So I can't wait to hear what all the pundits and everybody says in regards to this. So what do you all think about this? Do you think the judge will entertain this? Because with the fingerprint situation, he just gave limited instruction that that the jury wasn't going to consider, or they either struck that testimony, or they said that the jury wasn't going to be able to consider that testimony on anything. But you know how I am. Once that bell has been rung, it's hard to unring it. So they've seen it and they've heard it. And I don't know if they inferred or if they're coupling with the information that they got from Mia. Now, the reason why I say that is because with Mia's testimony, I don't think that the jury believed her. From what I've got from the people that were sitting in the courtroom, there were a few jurors that kind of made faces, and some of the questioning that she said didn't make sense. Because when Mia came into the courtroom, Mia wouldn't look at anybody. She was looking down just like I'm looking down. People said the only thing they saw of Mia was like this part, but it was in the middle of her head. They said that's all they saw of Mia. So, and even when she started talking or anything like that, or anytime the other that she looked up. So I don't know. But again, Diddy is paying these folks to be able to put holes, because that's all their job is to poke holes. And plus, we don't have what their case is going to be. Now, from what my understanding is, the prosecution was supposed to take 6 weeks of testimony, and then the defense is supposed to take 4 to 6 weeks of testimony. Well, the prosecution has 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks so far under their belt. And they said that they may finish early. They have another week. 1, 2, 3, 4. They were allotted 6, and they're on their 4th week. But because victim number 3 is out in the wind and wouldn't come in and testify, and they said that they wouldn't be using any of her testimony, that they're on schedule to finish on track and on time, because the judge wants to give this case to the jury. He wants closing arguments, I think, on July 3rd, and then give the case to the jury. So that's the schedule that he's wanting to put forth. So we will see. We will see, because this is going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see if the jury changes tactics. I mean, not the jury, if the prosecution changes tactics, or what's going to happen going forward. Y'all, we're going to find out Monday here. All right, people, we do this every week. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Please share this video if you care. Y'all, what do you think about Diddy's team? He's getting his money's worth. They're doing everything that they're supposed to do to poke every little hole in the story. What do you all think? Do you think that the prosecution, let me do this. Let me remove this. I'm about to leave, y'all. Let me put that up really quick. All right. So, what do y'all think? Do you think that the prosecution has met the burdens of any of these? I think I've gotten it too big. Y'all can't see that. That's the best we can do. There. Do you think that they've met the burden of this? Now, shout out to Nate the lawyer. He's the one that who did this graphic. I don't get no credit for this. So here it is. These are the indictments. If you look right here, these are the indictments. So we have 13A, kidnapping plus variations. This was supposed to be in regards to Capricorn Clark. Arson, an attempt and conspiracy. This was supposed to be 13B, was supposed to have been the Molotov cocktail at Kid Cudi's car. 13C was bribery of witnesses. This has to do with the Diddy giving the money to the people at the Intercontinental Hotel. I may not have put their names. Eddie Garcia, He was the one. Eddie Garcia was the one that received the bribe. Witness tampering, I think that they were trying to go over with Mia, or maybe they hadn't worked up to that yet, because I don't really see anything in the testimony or with the witnesses that goes on for witness tampering, unless they're going to add this to the bribery section with the people at the Intercontinental Hotel for the obstruction of justice. They're talking about the forced labor. I think that they're doing that with Capricorn, Clark, and doing that with Mia. Their testimony. The trafficking, I think that they're looking that he trafficked Cassie, that he trafficked um, Jane, uh, the prostitution transport. And I think that's because he transported the SMEX workers across the state lines. And then the drug distribution, I think it's because he was giving. There's been plenty of testimony that he has been giving drugs, or he even asked his staff to go procure mood enhancers for people that he was partying with and everything like that. Also, it could be for KK. It could be for his security team. You might as well add Jane. I don't know if they're going to add Jane Doe to that. I don't know if they're going to add Mia to that. But they had the people who did the raids and the people that did the arrest also talked about the drugs and stuff that they had in the hotel room. So we're going to leave it at that. Again, y'all, the defense done put up this letter. The defense says that they don't believe Miss Bungalong. They don't believe Cassie. And they also don't believe, they believe that the prosecution is out here lying and suborning perjury and out here manipulating testimony to fit their narrative. And they know that the testimony is a lie. Baby, Monday is going to be interesting. All right. All right. All right, people, we do this every week. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Please share this video if you care. Y'all, Diddy's team has filed for a mistrial, and we're going to see what Judge Submarinian does on Monday, and what the feds are going to say in regards to this, because they filed it on Saturday, so they have Sunday, all day Sunday, to rebut all of this. Let's see what they add in the docket. All right, people. Please tell a friend, tell a kin, tell a coworker, tell that heifer that you can't stand that I'm over here making these videos. And as always, people, bye-bye. Ooh, it's getting juicy. This case is really getting juicy.